Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am excited that you're here. It looks like people are filing in. Let me just know in the chat function here if you can hear me okay, if the audio is good and the video is working. Just let me know if you can see me. There we go. Welcome, everyone. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, John. Perfecto. All good. Hey, everybody. Well, my name is Eyal, and for those of you who are punctual, I love you. I love your kind of people. So thank you for being on time. And let's get started. My name is Eyal. I am an author. I published two books. The first one is called Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products, and the second one is called Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. And I owe a lot to Medium. Medium was a critical part of my career. I've been writing on Medium forever. It seems like for most of my writing career, I've been on Medium, and it really helped me get established. It was a place where I published articles that went viral, and I think my agent, who I've been with now for over 17 years, first found me on Medium. And so it's my pleasure to be here and support the platform and support you, future authors and perhaps current authors on this platform. So what I want to do real quick is to help you with this problem of distraction. I know as an author, when I sit down to write, all I want to do is everything but the writing. Does anybody else feel that you have this great idea, you want to get it out there, you want to work on that article, you want to share some great knowledge with the world, and yet when you actually sit down to write, you want to do everything but. You want to just check email, you want to see what's happening in the news, check stock prices, sports scores. The world is just full of so many distractions. And so what I did, I had this problem, and I was actually the most distractible person you probably ever met. And so that's why I wanted to try and solve it. And that's what I did for about 5 years, trying to write this book called Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. Now, why did it take me 5 years? It took me 5 years because I kept getting distracted. I was reading everybody else's book on the topic, trying to figure out this problem for myself, and I found that most of these techniques didn't work. There's a lot of non-scientific kind of rubbish out there that we do. One of my favorites is to-do lists. We all think we should keep to-do lists. It turns out that there's very little scientific backing for to-do lists, and that for most people, to-do lists are one of the worst things you can do for your personal productivity. And if you're interested, I can actually tell you exactly why to-do lists are so bad. But before I get into that, I want to give you kind of a framework for what distraction is and how to overcome it. And then I want to jump right into your questions because frankly, you can get you can watch my videos on YouTube, you can read my book Indistractable, but you can't get this live interaction everywhere. So we don't have that many people here. We have a good size audience where if you have questions, put them in the chat function and I will get to them very, very soon here in just a second. But to do that, let's talk about the kind of setting the stage here around what distraction is so we can try and overcome it and get back to work and actually do the kind of writing that we need to do to move our careers and our lives forward. So the best way to understand what distraction is to understand what distraction is not. What is the opposite of distraction? Most people think the opposite of distraction is focus, right? I don't want to be distracted, I want to be focused, but that's not exactly right. The opposite of distraction, if you look at the origin of the term, the opposite of distraction is not focus, but rather the opposite of distraction is traction. They're opposites, traction and distractions, right? They're antonyms. In fact, both words come from the same Latin root, trahare, which means to pull. And you'll notice that both words end in the same six-letter word, A-C-T-I-O-N, that spells action, reminding us that distraction is not something that happens to us. Okay, we like to blame, the pings, the dings, the rings, all the things in our life that might take us off track. We like to blame those things, but rather it is an action that we ourselves take. So traction by definition is any action that pulls you towards what you said you were going to do, things that move you closer to your values and help you become the kind of person you want to become. Those are acts of traction. The opposite of traction is distraction. Any action that takes you away from what you plan to do, away from your goals, away from becoming the kind of person you want to become. Those are acts of distraction. Now, the difference between traction and distraction is one word, and that one word is intent. As Dorothy Parker said, the time you plan to waste is not wasted time. So I would argue that all the usual suspects, social media and checking the news and stock prices and YouTube and video games, all the things we think we blame for distracting us, none of those things are actually bad. There's nothing wrong with doing any of those things as long as you use them on your schedule and according to your values, not someone else's, certainly not the tech companies. So if you plan time for it, it's traction. Anything else then becomes a distraction. Conversely, just because it's a work-related task doesn't mean it's not a distraction. Let me give you a perfect example. For years, I would sit down at my desk and I would say, okay, now I'm going to get started on this big project. I'm not going to let anything get in my way. I'm going to just do what I said I was going to do. Here I go. I'm going to start on this big project. I'm not going to get distracted. But first, let me check some email, right? Let me just check LinkedIn real quick. Let me just get up to speed on industry news, right? I got to do that. That's part of my job, right? Oh, for authors, I'll do some research. Let me just Google something real quick, right? And then what do you know? 20, 30, 45 minutes later, you're doing everything but the task at hand. And so, in fact, just because it's a work-related task doesn't mean it's not a distraction. In fact, that's the worst kind of distraction because you don't even realize you've gone off track. So just because it's a work-related task doesn't mean it's not a distraction. You have to plan exactly what it is you're going to do, or everything is a distraction, right? You know how many people I see who tell me, oh my God, the world is so distracting these days, and our technology this, and the news that, and you see what's happening here, and Twitter, blah, blah, blah. I can't focus. I can't concentrate. I'm constantly distracted. But when I ask them to look at their calendars and tell me, wait a minute, what did you plan to do today? Their calendar's blank. Their schedule's empty. So you can't call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. In order to get traction, you have to plan your day. And we can talk about exactly how to do that in a second. So now we've got traction, we've got distraction. Let's talk about what prompts us to take these actions. Let's talk about triggers. There are two kinds of triggers. The first kind of trigger you'll know all about. These are called external triggers. The pings, the dings, the rings, everything in our outside environment. It's what we tend to blame. Most people, before they understand the psychology of distraction, all they do is blame the things outside of them. It's my boss, it's my kids, it's the news, it's this, it's that, all this stuff outside of them. Turns out, however, studies have found that only 10% of the time that we get distracted is it because of an external trigger. 10%. So what's the other 90%? Turns out that 90% of the time that we get distracted, it's not because of what's happening outside of us, but rather 90% of distraction begins from within. These are called internal triggers. What are internal triggers? Internal triggers are uncomfortable emotional states that we seek to escape. Boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, anxiety, stress. This is the source of the vast majority of our distractions because you see, distraction is not a character flaw. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken in any way. It's just simply a skill that you haven't learned to control these uncomfortable emotional states. So that is the first step to becoming indistractable. That is the first step, I believe, to becoming a successful author. In order to do the work, you have to learn how to manage your emotions. Because here's the thing, guys. Time management is pain management. Money management is pain management. Weight management, you want to get in shape? It's all pain management. And so if you want to be a successful author, if you want to be successful at anything that requires long-term consistent effort, you have to learn how to manage your discomfort because that discomfort's going to be there. If you want to do something important, everything worth having in life is on the other side of discomfort. You want to build a great relationship, you want to raise great kids, you want to have an amazing career, you want to write a great article, you want to make an amazing career as an author, it's hard work. And so you have to learn how to deal with discomfort because most discomfort is what leads to distraction. That is the cause of the overwhelming amount of distraction. It's not what we tend to blame. It's not the news. It's not Twitter. It's not our phones. It's why we check these things in the first place. And distraction overwhelmingly is a desire to escape discomfort. So step number one, if you want to become indistractable, step number one is to master internal triggers or they will become your master. Okay, and there's a bunch of techniques in the book I talk about in Indistractable, excuse me, about how to do exactly that. Sorry. The next step to becoming indistractable is to make time for traction. So remember we talked about traction. In order to make time for traction, we have to turn our values into time. There's only two ways you can see what someone's values really are. You check how they spend their money and how they spend their time. You don't listen to what they say. People will say all kinds of stuff, but if you really want to know what your values are, you see how you spend your time, you see how you spend your money. And so just how we would have a budget for our money, you have to have a budget for your time, especially if you want to make it as an author, especially if you want to write, you have to make that time. Now, the problem is you can't plan time to finish a thing. What did he just say? Don't I have to have a to-do list and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and that? Isn't that the way I'm supposed to work, right? Supposed to get things done by checking them off some silly list? No. What you have to do instead, in order to use this time boxing technique that I talk about in Indistractable, what you want to do is to plan time to do one thing and one thing only. And that is to work on whatever it is you said you were going to work on. Whatever it is you said you're going to, if you said you're going to be with your kids, if you said you were going to write that chapter, if you said whatever it is you're going to do it without distraction for as long as you said you would. Not to finish. Okay. It's not about finishing. It's not, oh, I'm going to set a goal to finish this article. No, it's I'm going to work on this article for 30 minutes without distraction. That's it. Why is that so important? Because that is the only way to get a feedback loop around how long things take. Did you know that most people, when they say they're going to do something, they take 3 times longer than they originally predict? Why? Because they have no feedback loop. They write on some stupid to-do list, do this thing, and then they work on it for 5 minutes. Oh, I'm a little tired. I'm going to get a cup of coffee. I'm going to go talk to Janice. I'm going to check email. And then, wait, what was I working on again? Oh, I completely forgot and have no idea how long things take. So if I have to write an article for Medium and I say, okay, I think the article should be, I don't know, 500 words. And in 30 minutes, I'm about, maybe a halfway or a quarter in. Now I know, okay, well, if I have this many more time boxes, I'll finish the article. So you're building that practice of a feedback loop through the practice of time boxing. We can talk about more detail about how to do that when we get to questions. The third step is to hack back the external triggers. This is where we talk about those 10% of those pings, dings, and rings that do take us off track. There's some very simple things. It's kind of kindergarten stuff, frankly, about turning off notifications, making sure your computer isn't constantly pinging and dinging you. But the much more difficult external triggers are the things that people don't like to think about that actually are a huge source of distraction. Meetings that we didn't need to attend, emails we didn't need to receive or send. That is actually a much greater source of these external triggers causing distraction. We can systematically go through each and every one of those. Finally, we can prevent distraction with pacts. So I'll tell you a little story here. I read a study as I was researching my book, Indistractable. I read a study about the most successful smoking cessation study in history. Okay, what is the most successful way to quit smoking that we have ever discovered? Nicotine patches? Nope. Is it vaping or low nicotine type cigarettes or vaping devices? Nope. Is it cognitive behavioral therapy? Nope. You know what the most successful smoking cessation study in history was? A bet. A bet. When people put down money and said, if I don't smoke for this amount of time, I will win this bet, and they tested this through a urinalysis, that was more effective than any other smoking cessation system they could possibly conceive of, simply making that bet. And when I heard that, I decided to make a bet with a good friend of mine, Mark. We were writing buddies, and I made a bet with him. And I said, look, Mark, I've been working on this book for 4 years, and I just discovered this piece of research. I'm going to put this to action. I'm going to practice what I preach here. And I made a bet with him. And I told Mark, I said, if I don't finish my manuscript by January 1st, I will pay you $10,000. $10,000. Now, let me ask you, do you think I paid him the $10,000, or do you think I finished my book? Of course, I finished my book, right? Not only did I keep my money, I got what I really wanted, which was finishing the manuscript. And when you think about it, we pay coaches and writing, we go to writing seminars, and we pay tons of money. We pay thousands of dollars for people to keep us accountable, right? By entering into these programs. But actually, all it really takes is making what's called a pre-commitment pact, this pre-commitment device, by making a bet. And then you get both. You get what you wanted, right? Whether it's going to the gym, whether it's finishing the manuscript, and you get your money back. Now, most of you won't do this. In fact, probably none of you will do it because it scares the crap out of you, right? Tell me it doesn't scare you right now, betting $10,000 that you're going to finish that important task. You're going to, finish the manuscript. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to do whatever it is you've been procrastinating on. When you put down that money, it's terrifying. You know why it's terrifying? Because now you got to do it. But isn't that the entire goal? So when I hear people saying, oh, I can't do it, the world is too distracting, I just can't focus, I have ADHD, I have this, I can't do it. I have ADHD as well. And let me tell you, when you put down that bet, you'll do it no matter what, if the stakes are high enough. So now we've agreed you can do it. Now we're just negotiating a price. Okay, so those are the 4 big strategies. Master internal triggers, make time for traction, hack back external triggers, and prevent distraction with pacts. If you use those techniques in concert, anyone can become indistractable. All right, let's get into the questions. We've got 15 minutes left here. I want to give you something that you can't just get from one of my videos or reading one of my books. Give me your hardest questions. What are you procrastinating on? What is difficult for you to accomplish? What are you distracted by? Tell me your issues, and I will do my very best to try and help you. So let's see here. Thank you, Joita. Best 15 minutes of my life so far. It's very kind of you to say. I appreciate it. I'll keep watching the comments here and see if there are any questions I can possibly answer. You're very welcome, everyone who's I'm very thankful for the positive feedback. I'll scroll up and see if there are any questions. Okay, somebody asked about to-do lists. It's not that to-do lists. Okay, let me explain real quick why to-do lists are one of the worst things you can do for your personal productivity. So the first thing that makes to-do lists so bad is that to-do lists are a register of output. Okay, it's things you want to have done. Okay, but in order to get output, we need input. So, when my daughter had a birthday party and I wanted to make sure we had a bunch of cupcakes for her friends to eat, I went to the baker and I said, okay, I need a dozen cupcakes. Well, I'm guessing that that baker said, okay, well, for a dozen cupcakes, I need flour, I need sugar, I need butter, I need the inputs, I need the ingredients to make the output. But as authors, what's our input? It's not butter and sugar and flour. What's our input? Our input is only two things: our time and our attention. Where is that on the to-do list? Nowhere. All it is output. All it is the cupcakes. But how do I make the cupcakes? Where's the time? Right? So this is why to-do lists are not a very good solution. A much better solution is a time box calendar. Now, you can put stuff on a piece of paper, all the things you want to accomplish. That's fine. But that's step one. And most people stop at step one. Step two is to put those things in your calendar. And so the reason we do that is because unlike a to-do list that has no constraints, right? There's no constraints. You can put all your dreams, all your hopes, all your wishes on a to-do list. It's endless. A calendar has a constraint. We all get the same 24 hours in a day. So by planning the time and saying, I'm going to work for 30 minutes on my book, and then I'm going to, check email for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to be with my family, and then I'm going to have a bite, and then I'm going to go to the gym, whatever the case might be, it's forcing you to make trade-offs. Life is all about trade-offs. You're going to have to choose, do I spend more time in the office or time with my kids, time in the gym or time on my book? You're going to have to make that trade-off. A to-do list doesn't make you make those trade-offs. Only a time box calendar forces you to make those important trade-offs based on your values. All right, let me scroll up a bit here. Okay, can I repeat the 4 steps again? Absolutely. And let me actually put in the website for everyone here. If you want more information, here's my website, nearandfar.com, about all of this. And the book, again, is called Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. And the 4 steps of the Indistractable model are: step number 1 is master internal triggers. Step number 2 is make time for traction. Step number 3 is hack back the external triggers. And step number 4, prevent distraction with pacts. Okay, here's another question. Let me just dive in here. How do you feel about the good is the enemy of great philosophy? Um, I think that's one of those philosophies that you keep if it serves you. If I think part of it is that it's grounded in this idea that we have to finish based on a certain deadline, for example, right? But the problem is that those short-term deadlines don't always serve us. What serves us is the long-term deadlines, right? I needed a book deadline from my publisher. I need those kind of things, right? But the only way I can make those effective, what I used to do, I'll tell you what I used to do. I used to wait to the last minute, right? I'd procrastinate, delay, I'll get to it someday. I don't really feel like it. And then I do crappy work when it was almost due. And so that doesn't serve anybody. That's what we want to prevent. What we want to do instead is to put increments of time where you measure yourself not by did I finish, but did I do what I said I was going to do for as long as I said I would without distraction? That's a much, much better metric because now I know how productive I can be in that period of time. And of course, now you have to ask yourself, well, how good does that have to be? What's my standard? That's kind of a personal philosophical issue. I don't know if I can have a perfect answer for you that applies to everything because, okay, here, if I really have to think about it, here's my answer. I think good is the enemy of great, with the exception of your craft. Meaning, there's a lot of things I do an okay job on, right? Like, I don't know, there are all kinds of things I'm not very good at, right? I'm probably I'm below average at a lot of different things. But there's a few things I want to be really, really good at, right? I want to be a really good storyteller. I want to be able to mix science and research with practical application. I want to be world class at that. I want to be a world class speaker because I love conveying the ideas I'm working on. So there's very, very few things that I want to be excellent at. And then everything else I can be mediocre or below average. Okay, let me pick another question here. My challenge when it comes to this is from Susan. Thank you for your question. When it comes to writing, is believing that anyone will read what I write, having the doubt that writing is the best use of my time. How does one deal with self-doubt? Ah, Susan, such a great question. So I will tell you I'll tell you what's worked for me when it comes to self-doubt because it is a killer. I totally understand where you're coming from, and many, many times I'll be working on something I'm excited about for when I start, and then the doubt starts to creep in. I start hearing those voices of, "Is this any good? Is this original? This has been said before. I don't know," and that doubt is absolutely a killer. And what I constantly remind myself is that all I'm doing is following my curiosity. I think that's the secret to mastering a craft because what I think a lot of authors out there, they're told this, I think, bad advice, at least for nonfiction authors, about writing what you know. And maybe that works for fiction. I'm a nonfiction author. So to me, that's bad advice because writing what I know is super boring. I already know it. Why would I want to write about something I already know? For me, writing is driven by the desire to answer a question. And so I always write about my problems. And so when I was crazy distracted, I was looking for a solution. I read lots of books out there that tried to provide a solution and didn't work for me. So I had to go back to first principles and look at the research on what research psychology research says about distraction and figure out the answer that would work for myself. And so I was driven by that need to find the answer. And so if you do that, if you just follow your curiosity and write for yourself, you can't lose. Why? Because at the end of the day, you're going to find an answer for yourself. If you just keep pursuing it and pursuing it, you're going to find that answer. You're not writing for anybody else. You're writing for you. Now, the secret, the hack is that if you solve a problem that's important to you, chances are you're not alone. There's thousands, if not millions of people who have the same exact problem. So that's what I always try to remind myself that my primary reader is me. And it's great if other people have, enjoy my books. I've sold over 1 million copies. I'm super thankful for that. And I'm so glad people benefit from it. But selfishly, I write because I want to know the answer. So I hope that's helpful. All right, let's see. Um, how do I prepare myself mentally and technically before writing? What is important to do before you start writing? So for me, I don't have much ritual. I don't have much practice. I put my butt in the chair. There's a great book by Stephen Pressfield called The War of Art. It's really about what separates professionals from amateurs. Amateurs are the people who wait for inspiration, right? They wait until they feel like writing. Those are amateurs. Professionals don't wait to feel I actually never feel, or almost never do I feel like writing. It's fun when I'm in it, when I'm doing it. That's when I really enjoy it. And so that's really what separates, I think, professionals from amateurs is that professionals just do it. They don't need the perfect rituals. It doesn't have to be exactly right. They put their butt in the chair and they start working. Okay, let's see here. Uh, I just answered some of these already. Okay. How do I handle? Okay, so there's a few questions about daydreaming and worrying and distractions while you're writing. So what happens if in the middle of a writing session you have a great idea or a bad idea that you need to address or a worry or a fear? This is one of the tricks that I use every single day. So at my desk, uh, there's this amazing tool I have called a pen. Maybe you've seen these. These are amazing, right? I know you're all obsessed with your technologies, but this is one of the best technologies. And next to it, I also have a piece of paper. And what I do as I'm writing, when I have that fleeting idea, when I have that worry, that thing I've forgotten, that thing that I'm afraid I might forget if I don't do it right now, what I used to do was, well, let me just go take care of it. Let me just go send that email real quick. Let me just go do that bit of research real quick. And what happened is that I would take my eyes and my attention off of the thing I actually wanted to do, which was to continue writing. So I take out this magical device and I have a little post-it note and I just jot down a few words that then I can get back to later. Because in that writing session, again, my only job is not to finish the task, it's just to work on that one task for as long as I said without distraction. So whether it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, I'm just going to focus on that one task at hand. Okay. Let's see. Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for the kind words, everybody. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Any other questions? I think I got them all. Was there any other questions I missed? A lot of nice comments, which I appreciate. I'm just searching for what other questions I could possibly get to. Uh, some of the questions I guess I've missed. Maybe if you could rewrite the question. How do you ensure you stay focused on the title? Okay, so titles are really, really tough. I think I spent more time, or maybe as much time on titles as I have for the book. They are really, really difficult. The best thing I've done for titles is to run online surveys to get help from your audience. If you have some folks you can talk to send your friends surveys of, hey, I'm thinking of four, or on WhatsApp, for example, or on social media, say, hey, I'm thinking of four titles. What do you think of these? That's been very, very effective to me. What do I think of the Pomodoro technique? Okay, so Pomodoro is a technique. It's not a strategy. Techniques are what you do. Strategy is why you do it. So I think that the Pomodoro technique in isolation is not very effective. Why? I tried the Pomodoro technique many, many, many times, and here's what happens. I'd set the timer, I'd start using it for a few minutes, and then I'd get this intense feeling of boredom or stress or anxiety or loneliness, and then I'd quit. Why? Because I hadn't done step one. Step one is mastering your internal triggers. If you don't know what to do with that internal trigger, that discomfort of loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, stress, if you don't know what to do with that, you're always going to escape. You're going to click it away. You're going to scroll it away. You're going to smoke it away. You're going to drink it away. I mean, this is why we get distracted. It's because of our feelings. And so the Pomodoro technique, I think, is effective. It's a time boxing strategy. It's all it is. It's not, you're not time boxing your whole day. You're just time boxing the next, whatever it is, 45 or 20. I can't remember how much time, 20 minutes it is for the Pomodoro timer. It's not a bad technique. It's just not complete. If you don't use these four techniques in concert, the four strategies in concert, I should say, mastering internal triggers, you need a set of skills in your brain ready to go so that when you feel discomfort, you know what to do with it. In fact, maybe I'll give you one technique that everybody can start using immediately that I use whenever one of those internal triggers yields its ugly head. You know, when I'm writing, all I want to do is research something else, right? Let me just ask ChatGPT about this one thing, or let me just Google this one thing, or let me just read that research report. I bet there's something interesting I could write about. And it feels productive. It feels worky. But really, I'm escaping. I'm escaping doing the writing. And so what I have to do is learn to deal with those internal triggers, this insecurity that, oh, I need to find more information, when really what I need to do is write. Of course, there's a time for research. To me, that's separate from the actual writing process. The research is where I'm jotting down my outline. I'm making a few notes about what I want to write about. But the writing part is where I need to sit down and bang out bang on the keyboard until the words come out. And so for that, here's what I do. I use what's called the 10-minute rule. The 10-minute rule goes like this. You tell yourself that you can give in to that distraction. And this works just as effectively if you're writing an essay or a book, or you want to stop smoking, or you're trying to drink less, or you're trying to eat less chocolate cake if you're on a diet, whatever the case might be, whatever the distraction might be, you can give into it. You can give into it. Any distraction you want, but not right now. In 10 minutes, not for 10 minutes, in 10 minutes, you can give into that distraction. So what I do is I set the timer for 10 minutes, and now I have a choice to make. I can either get back to the task at hand, I can get back to the writing, or I can do what psychologists call surfing the urge. Surfing the urge acknowledges that these uncomfortable sensations are like waves, right? One of the big myths about our feelings and emotions is that in the moment, the brain makes us think we will always feel that way. When we're bored, we feel like we're always going to be bored. When we're lonely, we're always going to be lonely. When we're stressed, we're always going to be stressed. But of course, that's not true. Our emotions are like waves. Even if they feel like they're going to last forever in the moment, that's never the case. So your job is to surf that urge like a surfer on a surfboard. And so there's a few techniques you can use. One of them that I like to use is having a personal mantra. So as I'm surfing the urge, and this takes maybe 30 seconds, I'll take a pause. Okay, I'll set the time for 10 minutes. I'll take a deep breath. And before I go do that distraction, before I check email or go to get another cup of coffee or whatever it is that I said I wasn't going to do and just focus on the writing, I take a deep breath and I say this mantra. Now, this is my mantra. You can steal it. You can make up your own. Doesn't matter. This is what works for me. I take a deep breath and I tell myself, this is what it feels like to get better. This is what it feels like to get better. And what I'm doing is I'm reminding myself that that discomfort is a sign that I'm on the right track. I think so many of us are told that if you feel bad, it's bad, right? And I used to tell myself that if this isn't easy, I must be bad at it, right? There's no way that a professional writer would hate writing. How could Malcolm Gladwell and Michael Lewis, they probably love writing. No, it turns out we all struggle. I've sold a million books. Writing's hard. It hurts. It's difficult. That's the point. If everybody could do it, it wouldn't be special. It's because it's hard, right? So this is what it feels like to get better. I remind myself that. And to me, it's incredibly empowering. So when you implement that 10-minute rule, you just take that pause, say that mantra, take that deep breath. And when you're ready, get back to the task at hand, knowing that when the alarm rings, hey, 10 minutes are up. You can go do whatever you want. Check the email, go get a cup of coffee, whatever you want. But in 10 minutes. Now, here's the kicker. 9 times out of 10, when you tell yourself, I'm just going to surf the urge for 10 minutes or get back to the task at hand, when the alarm rings and then 10 minutes are up, guess what? You're in flow, you're enjoying what you're doing, and you keep going for the rest of that time box. So what you're doing is you're expanding that agency that you have. So what I've done over time is the 10-minute rule becomes the 12-minute rule, becomes the 15-minute rule, becomes the 20-minute rule. And wait a minute, turns out I do have control over my impulses. I don't have to constantly give in to every distraction. And so what you're doing over time is building that ability to prove to yourself that you're not the victim here to distraction, that you are in control of your mind, and you can extend that time that you're working on the task at hand. All right, it looks like I've gone over time. Thank you all so much. I appreciate all the kind words. This was really a pleasure. Thanks for the great questions, and stay indistractable, everyone, and have a wonderful medium day.